Hi, I'm Bill Carmody, and I'm the Marketing Whisperer. Today, my guest is Kevin Cochrane, who is the CMO of Digital Experience Management Provider of Jahia. He's formerly the CMO of OpenText and the former VP of Enterprise Marketing at Adobe. Welcome, Kevin.
Good to meet with you today.
So today we're going to be talking a little bit about sort of the emerging sort of disciplines between marketing and technology. We've talked a little bit about how marketing technology continue to sort of come together, and I think you're in a very good position to talk about sort of some of the changes that have occurred and understanding why sort of the chief marketing technologist is continuing to grow in importance in corporate America today.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm very much looking forward to having this discussion with you today.
So start with me, I think, go back. I'd like to actually start with your experience at Adobe. Sort of when you're working at Adobe, you sort of start to see some of these blurring lines. Tell me about sort of what were some of your lead indicators, some of the early identifications that, marketing and technology are starting to collapse.
Yeah, most certainly. I think we need to go back even a little bit earlier than the time at Adobe. Because we've really seen three successive waves of digital marketing. Adobe, clearly the pioneer and the leader of the second wave. The first wave, however, of digital marketing really started in 1996. And it was really led by three major technology disruptions. The first disruption being the availability of the Apache web server. For the very first time, people could actually download free open source software and they can actually put their shingle on the web. Then in 1997, there was consumer email popularized with Hotmail. Suddenly, marketers could actually reach their consumers in their home, outside the workplace. They could click links, and they could have the convenience of going online.
Right.
And of course, in 1998, people started to show a preference for going online with the rise of Amazon, eBay, and all of the dot-coms. And this really led to the first wave of digital marketing, which was the wholesale rollout of new web infrastructure to power the enterprise because e-business mattered. But mostly, the first wave was about brand marketing.
Sure.
Now, unfortunately, what we found up seeing, or I should say fortunately, we saw additional disruptions start to hit in 2006. And these were the leading indicators. And there's a very predictable pattern in this industry that give you kind of the early insight that something momentous is about to happen. 2006, Facebook opened up to the world. You didn't have to be a Harvard or Stanford student. Any social network could go online and establish their profile. 2007, you had the release of the iPhone. Smartphones became a reality and surged throughout the population. So we were persistently connected and we were socially connected. We were mobile and we were social. But then in 2008, you had another disruption, which was a financial crisis, which people lost their 401ks, they lost their homes, they lost their jobs, and they become very reluctant to part with hard-earned cash in the face of turbulent economic times.
Sure.
And in order to part with cash, they needed not only convenience, they needed immediacy of value, and they needed immediacy of social recommendations and validation that this was a worthwhile purchase. And so suddenly marketers were in the hot seat, which is they were previously seen as a cost center to the enterprise. And, in the face of declining revenues and poor outlook, they're the budgets that obviously should be cut. So marketers needed to take responsibility for basically not only building brand online, but driving demand online to take responsibility for pipeline and revenue to justify their marketing investments. Right. And that's really where you saw the rise of Adobe with their purchase of Base Software and their CQ5 product that it ultimately became the Adobe Marketing Cloud, by far and away the pioneer and leader in that second wave.
Well, and I think what's interesting about that is that, for most people, I started my career in 1994 building some of the very first commercial websites, right? So for most people, the early experiences with Adobe were things like Flash, right? And sort of looking at sort of these enhanced design experiences. What's fascinating is over the years, Adobe has pivoted, and they still provide their creative suites and they still do the traditional design services, but they're doing so much more focused around sort of the back-end plumbing associated with digital technology today. So whether it's Adobe Test and Target or the Cloud Marketing Cloud, all of these various different pieces are all driving toward better accountability accountability for business owners. And so I think that's the part that I think is really interesting, because it didn't used to be the job of the marketer to figure out all the technology plumbing behind the marketing. That was something that historically has been left to the IT services. Why do you think that changed? What shifted in terms of those differences as marketers started to drive more of that?
Well, obviously, I can't really speak too much about Adobe,
Sure.
but what I can say is that Adobe has long been kind of the clarion bell driving data-driven marketing and making certain that marketers were cognizant of what they were spending and the outcomes they were achieving for the spend that they did online. And obviously, they have assembled a very significant portfolio. And as I said, the pioneering leader in customer acquisition experiences and the second wave of digital marketing. But what changed ultimately, like I said, is marketers had to become responsible for driving business outcomes. It wasn't just that you could take your $50 million budget and park it with an advertising agency and then have some campaign manager in that agency allocate your spend to purchase different audiences across a variety of different media and then give you a monthly report. Actually, it became an ongoing hourly and daily optimization exercise that needed to be brought in-house into the marketing team, so that each and every person responsible for a given audience, for a given brand, for a given channel had to do their own campaign analysis, their own campaign optimization, and ultimately fight for a seat at the table in terms of budget based on the effectiveness of their campaign tactics. So what hitherto was literally just parked outside and just, throw $50 million over here, come up with a jingle, nice little brand slogan, everything's honky-dory. No, it became an in-house, hourly, daily process of rigorous analysis and optimization. And that's really where you saw the Adobe portfolio really focus to help marketers make that transition from brand to demand to lead that second wave.
Mm-hmm. So, and then as you saw a lot of these opportunities continue to unfold, talk to me a little bit about sort of open text and sort of what sort of drove you to sort of go to that next place and start to really find other opportunities beyond what you've been doing as a great, fantastic job at Adobe.
Yeah. So, if you look back at the waves of digital marketing, the first wave was very much a CIO-led wave.
Right.
Where the first part of that wave was the outfitting of web infrastructure to power the www brand experience. So, for example, in the first wave, CIOs led the implementation of websites for their CMOs. But then the first wave continued beyond www with the outfit of web infrastructure to power all of the extranets with the rise of things like Webster Portal, Epicentric, Plumtree, you name it, as well as to power the entire employee experience with the rollout of various portals, SharePoint, for example, for all of your intranets. The second wave was truly a pure CMO-led wave around demand generation online tied to customer acquisition experiences that were both mobile and social. But what started to change in roughly the late 2012, early 2013 timeframe is the role of the CIO, because suddenly a lot of the technologies in the MarTech stack started to have relevance beyond customer acquisition experiences. Okay. So, for example, employee engagement, critically important in order to drive your customer experience. Additionally, all of the targeting and personalization that you look to do for acquiring customers actually has relevance for your business partners to get them the most timely, relevant information that they need to provide their services to your customers as well. And so suddenly the CIO, who in the second wave was very much an operational leader focused on business process efficiency and cost reduction, started to come to the forefront again to think strategically about optimizing the backbone of the digital business and taking the technologies that the marketing teams were using so effectively to acquire customers and to potentially leverage them through the rest of the enterprise. So that really was the transition to open text, was that Adobe was great path. I mean, fantastic products, leading the wave on customer acquisition experiences. But beyond customer acquisition experiences on www, what else was the next wave of investment? And so OpenText, long a pioneer on kind of the digital backbone of enterprises, was looking to assemble all of its various technologies into a comprehensive suite offering to enable the CIO, right, to put in place all of the digital infrastructure to power the digital enterprise. So it was a nice complementarity between Adobe, one leading the charge on kind of the customer acquisition CMO front, and another one focusing on all of the back-end enterprise information management for all of your employees, your partners, your entire supply chain back behind it. So very much like, in the first wave, you had CIOs leading the CMOs and then going back into the enterprise. Really a combination of Adobe and OpenText really kind of started to take that second wave and tried to start to morph it to the third wave.
Okay. And so I think what's fascinating about that is that you are now seeing sort of a general trend, right? You're seeing this sort of expectation as the arc sort of continues on. So talk to me a little bit about Jahia, sort of like how did this continue on and then this get you to this next where you are today?
Yeah, so what's interesting is the third wave of digital marketing came a lot faster than I would have ever expected. I thought, just like the first wave was a 10-year wave, I really thought the second wave was like a 10-year cycle as well.
Right.
And I really thought that, at the OpenText side, there was at least, a good 5-year runway to kind of complete the entirety of the second cycle. But a couple things actually happened quite dramatically that really accelerated the dawn of the third wave, which is really the union of CMOs and CIOs together to power a next generation business and customer analytics to drive targeted, personalized, one-to-one experiences that build trusted, long-lasting brand relationships. And the three things that occurred in rapid-fire succession was number one is the popularization of Apache Hadoop. Big data became a reality. As you all know, you could process now real-time large data sets that you would never been able to process real-time before. 2014, IoT took off. You saw the popularization of new devices like Nest, cars like the Tesla.
Right.
You now suddenly had more sensors in more places, in the home, at work, in the office, everywhere, to get more data that you could process real time than you ever could before. And then, of course, in 2015, we all became targets.
Right.
Consumers woke up because they now realize that enterprises were collecting more data in more silos, and they had no idea what data was getting collected, why it was getting collected, how long it was being maintained, how it was being used for the benefit. And frankly, no one in the enterprise knew it. The only people who did know it were cyber criminals that were basically breaching the enterprise's four walls, primarily through employees' smartphones, and purloining that data and then causing catastrophic damage to people's lives.
Right.
And this was the dawn of the third wave. CEOs woke up in 2016, January, and basically said, customer experience is the only way long-term we are going to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. There is no longer any sustainable competitive advantage. Product cycles are too short. Every single person can start a new company in a garage and get immediate access to global markets. Switching costs are entirely low. There is no sustainable competitive differentiation other than your customer experience. Your customer experience is your brand. But there's a challenge there, which is you spend a lot of money to acquire customers. You spend a lot of money to make those customers loyal brand advocates. Mm-hmm. But in 1 second, you can lose trust as a consumer and never go back to that brand again. So the CEOs have two major goals. Number one, drive a differentiated customer experience. And number two, make certain that they mitigate risk and damage to the brand by making sure that they establish trust in the online and offline experience by protecting consumer data and privacy. And those that don't have that as a mission better wake up, because 2018, it's the law in Europe. And if you're doing any business in any European country, you do not want to get a fined percentage of your revenue if one day, which you will, and you will be found in violation. The only thing you can guarantee is that you're getting breached every single day. You just don't know it.
You know, it's really interesting. Warren Buffett was the one who first sort of said, you know, it takes years to develop your brand and your reputation, and, you know, just a few seconds to destroy it. And what you're basically saying is, you know, while that happens at an individual level, we're finally seeing this happen at the corporate level, where it's just across the board. This is the next frontier. And if you're not managing that overall customer experience and handling the data properly and managing the relationship them effectively, you're essentially dead.
You're going to go out of business. You know, Forrester and Gartner say it. Forrester basically says you will be rewarded or you will be punished.
Right.
And I just think it is such a wonderful statement. You'll be rewarded or you'll be punished. We have a conversation, we trust one another. You don't have conversations with people that you don't trust. Why do you spend money with someone you don't trust or someone that's harming you? You simply don't. And the interesting thing here is to deliver on the next generation of customer experience. It's not about using non-personally identifiable information to come up with maybe 12 different customer segments, primarily based on demographic data, in order to drive a conversion experience, okay? Been there, done that. That's Adobe is the kingpin in that. They're fantastic. If you want to do that, best game in town, love them, okay? But the next generation of customer experience is what happens post-log and what happens when you are a customer. And when I expect you to know me by name, I want you to know every
and my preferences and everything I want to buy and everything about me.
It's all 100% personally identifiable information. Every single employee needs to know exactly who I am, and that's where it becomes scary for people, because then your digital life is your life. Right. And so that data, you must be respected. If your digital life is your real life, you need to be respected as a real person. You need to be able to trust that company, that they're not going to sell your data to third parties or expose it to third parties. And brands have not been thinking like that. They think about protecting your credit card, but they don't
not all your personal identity.
Not like where you live, you know, what I like to eat, where I like to go, so on and so forth. And particularly in an age of IoT, it's super scary because everyone knows exactly where you are at every single moment of the day. So to win in customer experience, it's like this Hegelian dialectic, which is to win, you have to know your customers at an intimate level, when they wake up, when they go to sleep, what hopes, dreams, and aspirations they have, meet the brand promise that you want to afford to them. But at the same time, that's all the very data that makes it so valuable to steal from you. So what do you do about that? You have to put in place the infrastructure not only to aggregate all the incredible data and analyze it and to provision it to your employees to real time, you know, empower them to get the right content, to get the right experience to the customer at every brand moment and every interaction. But you also have to use that centralized customer context to put in place new governance, so you can actually empower the consumer to understand what data you're collecting, why you're collecting it, how long you're keeping it, how they can delete it, etc. So it's interesting because you can try so hard to do this right and utterly catastrophically fail. You actually have to do both at the same time. They're of equal importance. And I obviously am passionate about this point, but that's what we do here at Jahia. So suddenly what you saw was this rapid formation of the third wave. I would have never thought it would have happened until 2020. You know, OpenText, we talked about Vision 2020. 2020 was supposed to be the end of the second wave, for crying out loud.
It
now, happened earlier. It happened in 2015. And it really was as a result of all of, you know, the Target breach. Started a very vastly accelerated process.
Well, you talk about sort of the customizing the digital experience at scale, right? This is really sort of the interesting sort of coming together based on everything you've just described. When your privacy, you know, when we've got the ultimate information you need about your customers, you understand through wearables and other technology where they are, when they are, all those things. Now it comes down to, you know, you have to create these customized experiences, but you're doing it at scale. And this is where I think most companies companies sort of struggle, because now they're like, okay, well, I know how to do certain levels of customization because I've learned how to do that. But to do this at the level you're talking about, is something that's typically overwhelming for most businesses.
Right.
So what do they start? What's the first thing that they need to start doing?
So I'm a huge fan of Battlestar Galactica. I'm watching it again. I don't know how many times I've seen Battlestar Galactica. I still don't understand it. But the reason why I reference that is because what's happening now has happened before and will happen again. And that's the only thing I remember from Battlestar Galactica, by the way. So just like in wave one, we broke certain bottlenecks. We broke the content publishing bottleneck. In wave one, you had to email a Word document to a webmaster, and then they cut and paste from a Word document into a template, and then that published the content. And so in wave one, my first company, Interwoven, we broke the webmaster publishing bottleneck. I actually coined that term in my first white paper. I wrote it in June 1996. No one knows it, so I'll tell you that right now. Because I interviewed the world's first 50 webmasters. I was like, you webmasters are a bottleneck. I didn't really like that term, but that's okay. The one that didn't take off was the Frankenstein complex. But now we had that with the Frankenstack and Martech. But anyway, so we broke the publishing bottleneck in wave one. And in wave two, we actually broke kind of the multi-channel publishing bottleneck, right? Because you had a whole bunch of people in the mobile social space where you would actually have to have some specialists build out the mobile application, and then the marketers weren't able to control the mobile application, so on and so forth. So in wave two, you actually broke that multi-channel context publishing bottleneck. So marketers could take responsibility for the mobile experience as well as the online experience. But we still have a certain bottleneck right now with customer experience, which is, how do you break the personalization and context bottleneck? So today, in order to personalize and deliver the right content in context, you typically have a small team of people.
Right.
These are the people that sit in testing and optimization. There's one of them, two of them, three of them, four of them, and they're the wizards, and they have all the data, and they have all the analytics, they have all the insights. They know more than everyone. They're the smartest guy in the room, and they basically create like 10 or 12 targeted segments based primarily on non-personally identifiable geographic data, whatever. And they produce reams and reams of report about how great they are. Okay? And it's a total bottleneck. So in order to deliver one-to-one digital experiences, you have to break that bottleneck. You have to empower people not just to publish content. You have to empower them not just to publish to mobile and social experiences. You have to empower them to connect one-to-one with their audiences. So you need to fuel the engine. You need to turn on the fire hose. You need to aggregate context across all silos in the MarTech and IT stack and give it to each and every subject matter expert that's authoring content, so that person can make an informed decision. I'm writing a piece of content. I know exactly what I'm writing and who I'm writing it for.
Right.
I want to target it. That's my job. I wrote it. 10,000 people are writing content. 10,000 people should be writing the targeting rules. It's, excuse my language, asinine for that to be a separate function for some 26-year-old that happens to have too much data that they don't know what to do with. Okay? There's real people that know that they're writing for real people, and they should be able to do all of their personalization. They should be able to set all of the context. And so the number one thing is break that bottleneck. Empower people to do their job and do it well. So from a content perspective, make sure that all content being by all people has the appropriate context of who it should be targeted for, what groups of people, what interest profiles, and so on and so forth. The person who authored it actually knows, believe it or not.
Well, and they have access to data. I mean, this is the other thing that we're seeing is the democratization of big data. So I think what happened was initially big data was something that only a few people actually had access to, and so those are sort of like the power mongers, right? And that's kind of what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's right.
And now we're actually, used by having 10,000 people with 10,000 different sort of focused audiences, they should be able to leverage the data that they're receiving from that content to optimize exactly what they're doing. So that makes sense.
That's extremely well said. I mean, Jahia, we're a small company. I have completely lost control of my content marketing engine, I'll be honest.
And you're happy about it.
I love it. I love it. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's more content being authored in so many different voices and to so many different audiences, I completely lost control. I give up. I mean, my team's thrilled. I was just talking with my head of content marketing, Lynn Sherrill. She got the new haircut. She's beaming. She's smiling. I'm like, why are you so happy? I was like, I don't even know what's going on anymore. Just this new stuff showing my inbox all day long. And she's like, that's right, because we're on fire. I just completely lost control. It's
That's
good.
great. Well, and I think, I will say, I'll add the word, the illusion of control, right? Because we never really had control. It's just that we had the illusion that we were, and we did by, whether we meant to or not, we created bottlenecks that we're now breaking through. And so that sort of at scale really comes by having the right people talking to the right audiences all the time. And so now it's like creators of the content. Right.
You're absolutely right, but just beautifully said. I could not top that. But I will double down on that because I'm famous for doubling down, which is just like in the first wave, you had basically empower everyone, control everything, right? Interwoven mantra. In wave 2, Day Software / Adobe, it was freedom within a framework. So when you give responsibility to subject matter experts and give them the independence and the authority to make these critical decisions, you also need to put in place a governance framework, and you need to have the bumper rails so people don't unintentionally do things that do harm, right? And so this is where the privacy aspect comes in, which is great. We're going to get all this context. We're going to give you all this information in real time about who all these customers are, so you can make all these great informed choices, do all this targeting on all this personalization. But we're also going to lock it down.
Right.
And we're going to know who's getting what information when, how long they have access to it. We're going to make certain that they don't have access to it for any longer period of time than they should. And we're going to actually be transparent to the consumer about the data we're collecting, why we're collecting it, how long we're holding it. And we're going to allow the consumer themselves to make choice about what should be anonymized, what should be deleted. And we will never sell that data to another party without their express author. Well, we will never do it at all.
Period. Right.
We just think that's pure evil. But if some other person wants to sell, third-party data, well, you should pay the consumer for it. It's their life. Right? There are people that collect random data about consumers and they sell it on a gray market. Well, wait a second, that's the consumer's data. Are you paying them for that? But we're excited because going forward in the third wave, every marketer is going to be able to have incredible insight as to every customer that they're trying to touch and target. They're going to be capable of doing it. And every consumer is going to have trust because every consumer is going to go to a Jahia Power website, click the privacy link, and say, here's everything that everyone in the company knows about you. I want that anonymized. I want that deleted. I want that data stored in Germany and Germany only. The consumer is going to have control. So yes, there'll be an illusion of control in marketing. No, in the end of the day, we're going to empower real people to take back control of their digital lives.
Awesome. Kevin Cochrane, CMO of Jahia, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. This has been a fantastic interview. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Phil. It was great meeting you, and it was a wonderful conversation on my end as well. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.